need to make a mount for our camera. The one I have is in town in our trailer that we couldn't make it up here with the trailer. So the first step is to measure the camera. I'm going to cut a block of wood so that I can bend the metal around the block of wood, and then hopefully it'll fit the camera. So first thing is I'm going to measure that camera right there. So 1.125" by 7/8. So I'm going to cut a piece that size on the table saw and then make a mount to fit it. This is the mount for the DJI Osmo Pocket. That's what we're making this for and filming this on. So this is what the bottom of that looks like. You can buy mounts now that will fit it, but the closest store to buy mount is about 2 hours away. So hopefully in the next couple minutes we can make a mount for this. Over my scrap pile of junk, I have this piece of aluminum. So I'm going to take this aluminum, and I don't know what it's from, but I'm going to cut this part off so I don't have this track. It would make it harder to bend. It has a nice bead on the bottom, which makes it soft to put the camera in. But I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to cut this with the jigsaw. Normally I cut it on the table saw, but I don't want to change this blade because I have a lot of stuff to cut out with it in just a few minutes. So I'm going to try with this. It's going to shake it around and be obnoxious, but that's the way life is sometimes. So that's plenty. I just ripped this off a chunk of it. That's plenty to do what we're going to do. So I'll cut this off. We'll start bending. So that little piece will be the starting point. I'm going to use a clamp this to our thing here, our board, and start doing some of the bends. If you had a metal brake or something, this would be a lot easier, but we want these bends to be square, so we want this to be perpendicular to our camera model as much as possible. This is just light aluminum, so it will bend easy. Then we'll use a hammer to just kind of, since it has that bead on there, it keeps it from bending a little bit. So we'll just use a hammer to sharpen up the corners. Okay, so that's the first part. Okay, so now I want it to bend this way, then down, so that we have a way to clamp it around the camera. So I'm going to open this one up, bend this back around the camera, and then we'll do the opposite, and then squeeze it back together. We'll put this in our mold, and then just bend this by hand. So I'm going to do like kind of a 90. I want this to go halfway. So at about this point, I want it to bend out. I say out like a Canadian sometimes. Sorry. When you're bending stuff, there's always one way to do it where if you do it in the right sequence, it's easier. But I always do it the wrong way. We're going to bend this 90 degrees this way. Take it off the clamp. And kind of. Then we'll leave it like that. It's fine for right now. And we're going to do the same with this one. So We're going to bend this out of the way, put this on here, bend it around twice. Mark it just short of halfway. Clamp it here and bend it. You could also put this in a vise or something. You got this mangled shape, but it has the starts of the right bends in there. So I go around like that. This will bend there. This will bend there, and then it'll clamp around the camera. So we'll go ahead and tighten these up, and then we'll make it a point to fasten this to a tripod. So we lay this down on the table and pound these and kind of tighten the bends up. Let's sit on it though to hold it. I did these a little bit too far. This leg is a little too long. So this meeting, I would prefer there to be a little bit of space in the middle there. It would fit the camera tighter. But I think we can make it work. Turn it this way. Okay, so now we've made a shape that more or less will grab the camera. So now we need to make a way to attach that to a tripod, which I think is just a coarse thread bolt. So what I'm going to do is bend this around the bolt and put a nut on the bottom. We'll try that. The other one I made like this, I thought I would want a nut on here that you could tighten down, but I made it pretty tight so the camera fits in there, and it has that much space to keep it from tilting, so it stays in there pretty tight. So I need this shape to stay like that before we bend it around a bolt. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pop rivet in right there. To do that, we're just going to drill a hole down in here where we want it fastened and rivet it together. These rivets are a little long. You can buy these that will go through different lengths of material. So it won't be really clean on the back side, but we'll grind it, make it look good. Push that in tight. Crank this a few times. That'll hold that shape that we made. Now we can open it up like this and bend it around a bolt like this. The carriage bolt isn't ideal, but that's what we have over here. So we're just going to bend that around. I'm going to use a screwdriver and pound on it right in there. That'll make a tighter bend around the bolt. I'm going to put this nut on here to hold this so the square part of the carriage bolt is down in there before I bend it. So that's just holding it kind of in place. Now I can pound that down. Just want to put it right there on the edge. So let's fit it snug around that bolt so that with this tightened down, that bolt won't move. So now we'll go ahead and put another rivet out here and then cut the end off. And I'll put a couple nuts on the bottom to show you how we hook it to a tripod. I'm going to trim this off with a grinder, and I can soften the edges. Hopefully after all this, the plastic thing fits in the camera fits in there. I use this grinder to cut the aluminum, which it cuts it okay. It's not the best tool for the job. I'll also use it to trim up the long part on these rivets, since they were a little longer than I needed. So that'll need to be, I can hit that with this hand sander, soften all that up. So now, right now I have this little tripod and this bolt sticking out. So obviously that's not going to work. So what I will do is put a nut on here with just a little bit of a thread showing. So there's maybe one thread. And then I'll put this nut on here. This catches. And then I'll put some thread locker on, tighten those two on. What that will allow is for this to thread onto any tripod. And it will hold the camera. So and then when we're done, this spins off. Hey Lincoln, could you please give me a crescent wrench or something? With that. So this, I'll just put a dab of this thread lock on this one. So this nut just keeps the bolts tight to our mount.
Can you explain what that stuff is?
Yeah, this is like, it's thread locker. So you put this on a bolt, it's kind of like a glue for a nut. So there's different strengths. So this is a permanent or high strength. So in a high vibration or something, you don't want a bolt to come off. But you would use this. So I use just a little bit of a dab down here on the end too, because we want those two nuts on the end to remain in the right spot without moving, so that when we go to put it on the tripod, it works. You can also lock two nuts together by jamming them together like that. This would be like a jam nut. So if I tighten that one really tight against that one, it would technically keep it where it's supposed to be. But the thread lock is just a little bit of insurance. You just crank this a little. You can crank this nut against that nut. Okay, and then we'll just use this 220 sandpaper. Sorry. It's better without holes in it, because then the holes catch it. Just go around and hit all these edges. This bottom edge is what I cut with the jigsaw. So just going like this real quick softens it up. If you go in the same direction, it gives it the same brushed look. Really fancy. We can use a lacquer thinner to mark off our Sharpie marks. But then that will mount right on there, and that's stable.
Okay, folks, there's the finished product.